Welcome to Fields of Change, an audio video series brought to you by the Foundation for Agrarian Studies. In the lead up to the FAS International Conference on Agrarian Change to be held from November 6 to 9, 2025 in Trivandrum, Kerala, India, we bring you conversations with leading scholars on major themes around agrarian change, including land and labor, rural living standards, science and technology in agriculture, and the impact of climate change. Part 4a explores how climate change is experienced in agriculture and the various debates around its impact, especially in developing countries, as discussed by Professor T. Jayaraman. Global warming is impacting agriculture worldwide. How is it being experienced, particularly in developing countries such as India?
The way climate change, or more correctly, global warming that is going on, the way that it is affecting agriculture is somewhat complex. It is not that globally, everywhere, there is any impact on productivity or overall production. But this is true in most parts of the world, that there is actually not that kind of impact. But two things are very clear. One is that the potential growth, given the available technology and techniques, the potential growth that we could have seen may not have taken place. In some parts of the world, global warming has actually helped increase production and productivity. That is limited to some temperate regions. But globally, there has been a depressor effect of the impact of global warming. And this is very important. The second, which is a question which we are also looking at currently, when there are climate extremes, not the average season, but a season with drought, a season with flood, or a season with extra high temperatures, then the impact is perhaps more severe than it would have been 30, 40, 50 years ago.
At the academic and policy levels, what are some of the key debates surrounding the impact of climate change on agriculture and rural livelihoods?
Well, I think there is there are actually a very wide variety of debates. They overlap quite a bit, so there is some similarity, but there are also differences. So perhaps I can mention a couple which I think are very important. One is, for instance, to think of not agriculture production, not to think of farm and farmers, but to think of what they call food systems, where you think of it as a system, where you say it is the input value chain, as they talk about it, including, for instance, how the electricity is produced for the electricity which the farmer may be using to run his pump set. So, including all kinds of such effects and going all the way up to output till it reaches the plate, as they say, from farm to fork, up to it. So, there is a view that you must consider all of this. Now, it is true that this is seems very interesting. So you think of it as a system, and everybody is for a systemic view. But on the other hand, this system has a very different players. And we could have other systems. I could think of a transport system, of which the transportation of farming inputs and farming outputs is only a small part. So this way you can produce all kinds of results which appear very alarming. Like, for instance, health, if it were a country, is the fifth biggest emitter. Okay. So that seems very alarming. No, can you imagine? It's the fifth biggest emitter. But that is spread all over. And for instance, if I bring vaccine by aircraft to supply in emergency, do you count it as part of emissions? There are questions of this kind. So this is one debate. So should you think of systems, or should you think of where there are resources, where there is capital, who does the activity, who does it affect? So obviously, small farmers are very different from Monsanto, no? So you have to put an obvious point. So this is one debate. Another very interesting debate, which I'm also involved with at some level, is what you call how should you think of adaptation? So there is this idea coming primarily from the global north that adaptation should be transformational. Now that looks, of course, very this thing. Whenever you do something, it is better if it is transformational. But it's not very clear what transformational means, and they contrast it with something called incremental adaptation. So there is a lot of debate around this, and a lot of us in developing world are very confused by this idea that comes from northern academia, and in policy circles that it is quite seriously debated. And you find, for instance, examples like early warning systems are incremental, not transformational. Why? Because they may exclude the poor. But of course, in India, from early warning systems, poor, are they excluded? I would say that's a strong statement to make. I don't think that is true. They may not get the full benefit, or they may not know how to use the information. There may be such gaps, and local information may be needed, and so on and so forth. But are we saying early warning systems will inevitably exclude people? So there is this idea for some of these academics that early warning systems are exclusive, but you need something which is integrated, etc., which is transformational. So this is another debate, I think, which we are very occupied with. Is quite a subject even in the climate negotiations, considering that the world is still, we cannot say, successful in any major way in dealing with these issues. These debates are very relevant and will definitely continue.
Thank you for listening. We'll be diving into more facets of climate change and its impact on agriculture in the next episode.